Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. If you remember last time, when talking about summarizing and responding to nonfiction, we had talked about what it meant or what it means to summarize effectively nonfiction text. We talked about why summarization is important, and today we want to move on and we want to talk about responding to nonfiction. Certainly, while the summary that you write should be devoid of your opinion, the response to nonfiction, again, when effectively responding, should contain those conclusions that you've developed about the original piece, the audience, or, again, anything related to the text. Now, if you remember, there are three ways in which you can respond to argumentative nonfiction, to an argumentative article. You can take up the position of the article. You can agree with the article. You can defend the position that the author espouses in that article, and certainly come up with not only reasoning from the article itself, but perhaps even beyond the article in order to back up that position. But maybe you don't agree with the author. Maybe you think the author is dead wrong. Well, that's great. You're entitled certainly to your opinion, but remember what I've told you in past classes. The difference between an idiot and an intellect is that any idiot can have an opinion. An intellect can back up that opinion. So you might choose to disagree with the author. You might reject the author's established position and then use perhaps reasoning from the article itself or reasoning outside of the article, certainly other sources that you could pull in order to refute that author's article. And certainly there is that third option. Maybe you agree and disagree with the author. Maybe you feel the author makes some good points, but you don't wholeheartedly buy the argument. In this situation, you would qualify when responding to the argumentative article. Qualifying is where you explain, again, the kind of benefits or the merits of the author's point of view, but also you draw out into the light some of the ideas with which you do not agree, or where you do not agree with the author. And certainly you would use reasoning from the article and outside of the article in order to create that qualifying opinion. In my own mind, the problem with qualification is that really you sort of end up where you began. You may not have had an opinion on a particular topic about which an author writes, certainly prior to reading the article, and really you don't have a definitive opinion at the end of the article because you're sort of qualifying, you're riding the fence. For the purposes of my class, I'd always like you to either agree or disagree, whereas qualification, I think, becomes a more difficult argument in order to write. That said, let's talk a little bit about what a good response should have. A good response to a nonfiction article certainly should contain a very strong topic sentence. I should clearly be able to see from that topic sentence whether you agree or disagree, or whether you're qualifying regarding the main idea. What that means is I should see what that, or have evidence to show what that main idea is, which is where reading and actively annotating the article certainly comes into play. When you're establishing your position, remember, you're all seniors at this point. You're mature writers. So you want to try to avoid using statements like I think, or I feel, or I believe. You instead want to state your position assertively, directly, as if this is, again, the correct answer to this particular topic. If you look at the example on the bottom, certainly you can see the position that I've taken. You can also see the main idea. Notice also that I've included the article title, Weed Whacked, and the author, David Frum, in that topic sentence. Oh, and one more thing that I've done. If you take a look, I've sort of outlined the argument that I'm going to make, again, in that response to this nonfiction article. Now you can clearly tell, in this case, I'm agreeing with David Frum. I do believe that marijuana use in our country today is not a good idea. It should be abhorred. And I've outlined the reasons why. I believe that it undermines our productivity. I believe it leads to habitual drug use addiction. And certainly it establishes a precedent for other drug legalization. So, once you've created that topic sentence, how will you flesh out the rest of your argument? Well, let's talk about this for a second. Certainly, in a well-developed paragraph response, you still want to adhere to the idea of again, presenting at least 3 strong reasons to back up your position, whether you agree, disagree, or qualify. If you take a look, once the topic sentence has been delivered, you should provide the first reason to support your position. You should then offer textual support, certainly citing this, whether that support comes from the article or comes from an outside source. You want to provide commentary or explanation that shows how that textual support validates that particular reason or position. And then you want to transition to the second reason to support your position. Certainly you want to provide that second reason, once again offer textual support and cite it accordingly, and then provide the additional commentary or explanation on how that particular reason validates the overall position. You want to transition to the third reason to support your position, offer, again, textual support with citation, and then provide commentary to explain how the textual support, again, validates the position, whether you agree, disagree, or qualify. Once this is done, then you certainly need to provide a very effective conclusion sentence that brings your response to a close, perhaps adding a final reflection or a final thought regarding the position that you've taken. Once that's done, really, you've created a fairly well fleshed out, fairly effective response. What you should consider, though, is still the following. Ask yourself the following questions once you're done with the response. How do you feel about the topic of the article? Your response should answer this. What reasoning have you used to support the way you feel about the topic of the article? Again, there ought to be 3 strong reasons that back up your position that you've taken on that topic. And certainly, what specific textual details or support, both within the article and perhaps outside of the article, have you used to validate your reasoning? If you've answered all of these questions, or you can answer all of these questions effectively and in detail after you've written your response, then you have a well fleshed out response to a nonfiction article. That said, this brings to a close our discussion of responding effectively to nonfiction. Thank you very much for listening. Happy responding, and as always, ladies and gentlemen, carpe diem.